My dad tore up my $50,000 scholarship in front of me and told me to be like my brother. I packed up and left that night. Yesterday, he called from his car crying because my brother stole everything from everything. My parents groomed me and my older brother David from the second we were born, but not in the way you're thinking. You see, they programmed David to think he was an untouchable superhuman. Meanwhile, I was nothing but a future baby carrier. When I won a $50,000 academic scholarship at 16, my dad tore it up right in front of me. I can't believe you even considered telling me about this. You should be pregnant by now, he said, lifting his fist as if he was about to hit me. He managed to stop himself, but it was still enough for me to feel uneasy. And that same week, they bought David a $50,000 BMW for his birthday. Image matters for men, Dad explained. When I started crying, he lifted his hand to slap me again. This time, he didn't stop himself. Stop being selfish. Your brother has a future. But compared to my mom's disturbing tradition, none of this was even that bad. It all started the day I turned 8 years old. Instead of waking up to gifts or a hug, she handed me a pregnancy stimulation suit filled with sand. I was forced to spend the entire day wearing it while watching birthing videos. She'd add weight if I complained, saying, "Real mothers don't whine." From there, I was forced to wear it every weekend. She even made me practice breastfeeding on dolls that cried if held wrong. While I spent every session plotting escape, she'd parade me around relatives who'd touch my fake belly and coo about my future babies. When I turned 14 and told her I wanted to be a doctor, not a mother, she made me wear the suit to school under my clothes as punishment. To remind you of your true purpose, she said. The janitor found me crying in the bathroom, trying to cut it off with scissors. He even offered to call CPS, but I declined because I knew my mom would only punish me more. Plus, I was lucky because my parents had been abusive for my entire childhood, which meant I'd been hiding money since I was 12. Babysitting cash, secret acrylic business, tutoring, the works. So by the time I turned 18, I had just over $8,000 stacked up in a shoebox under my bed. When I told them I was leaving for college, my mom locked me in my room for 2 days to think about what family means. When the 48 hours passed, my dad was the one to unlock the door. If you walk out that door for college, you're not welcome back. I left with my shoebox and a trash bag filled with my belongings. Meanwhile, David became everything they had dreamed of, a senior partner at a prestigious law firm, engaged to a Latina beauty, golf buddies with senators. They had so much faith in him that they retired early just to bask in his glory. And as for me, well, I was erased from family photos like Stalin's enemies, but I'd gaff LOL, because just last year, I was promoted to director of engineering, 6 figures, company equity, team of 20. I almost called them to share the news, then I remembered they didn't have my number, and I never saw my parents again, until 8 months later, that is. I was fast asleep at 2 a.m. when I heard my old phone ringing in the drawer. It was my mom. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Sophia, we need your help. David, he's gone." "What do you mean gone?" "He took everything. He was sick with stage 3 lymphoma. So we sold the house, cashed out retirement, everything for his treatment, but there was no cancer." He lied. I sat up in bed and stayed silent as she continued. "Yesterday, the bank called. Our accounts are empty. The house is gone. The cancer center doesn't exist. He's been in Dubai for 6 months. Dad took the phone. We're in our car. We're 70 years old and sleeping in our car. The country club members want their donations back. They think we were in on it. Please, Sophia, you're all we have left." The next day, I met my parents at a Denny's. They looked like different people. Dad's golf tan faded to gray, Mom clutching a garbage bag of clothes. When I handed them my business card, director of engineering, Dad's hands shook. "You made it," he whispered. "Without us, despite us." I paid for a small apartment, 1-year lease, set them up with part-time work through my network. Basic survival, nothing more. Mom cried when she signed the lease. "We gave the wrong child everything." "No," I said. "You gave the right child nothing. And look what I built from it." When I got home the next day, there were 4 men in my living room. Turns out our parents' money wasn't enough for David because he was in debt too. More specifically, $10,000 of debt that was 2 months overdue. It was made very clear that my options were my well-being or handing over the money. So, under their supervision, I calmly took out $6,000 in cash and handed it over. I told them I could give them the rest tomorrow. But when they finally left, I felt a deep anger brewing in my stomach because I spent my entire childhood wishing someone would hit David into shape. But I never knew that that someone was going to be me. I grabbed my phone and texted David immediately. My fingers trembled as I typed the message that would start everything. The response came within seconds. 3 laughing emojis followed by a selfie of him lounging by an infinity pool, the Dubai skyline glittering behind him. My stomach churned when I noticed the Rolex on his wrist, Dad's retirement watch. I initiated a video call before I could stop myself. David answered on the second ring, his face filling my screen with that same smug expression from childhood. He was shirtless, tanned, relaxed. I stood in my ransacked apartment, still processing what had just happened. He spoke first, his voice dripping with fake concern. Then he laughed, a sound that transported me back to every childhood humiliation. The casual cruelty in his next words about Mom's jewelry made my blood run cold. I realized then that this wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. My doorbell camera app buzzed. I pulled up the footage while David rambled about family obligations. 4 men in dark clothing, faces partially visible, professional, organized, the kind of people you don't call the police about. A knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Miguel, my building's security guard. His concerned face told me he'd seen everything on the cameras. I ended the call with David and let Miguel in. Miguel shifted nervously, explaining he had the full footage but warning me about the type of people who'd visited. When he offered his cousin Rico's number, mentioning he used to run with similar crews, I understood the gravity of my situation. These weren't just any debt collectors. I stared at Rico's number on the scrap of paper. The collectors had mentioned interest doubling after 48 hours, $4,000 by tomorrow, or things would escalate. My savings could cover it, but that would leave me vulnerable. Miguel's cousin might buy me time to figure out David's game. The call with Rico revealed more than I expected. David owed $50,000 across multiple crews, playing them them against each other like chess pieces. My address was his insurance policy, his backup plan. Rico's matter-of-fact tone made it clear this was bigger than just $10,000. I drove to my parents' apartment at midnight, my mind racing. The building looked even more rundown in the darkness. Inside, I found them sleeping on the floor of their living room. David's childhood bed dominated the space, his photos arranged like a shrine. They'd given up their own bed for his memory. Their laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. I scrolled through email after email from David, detailed cancer updates, treatment schedules, photos from supposed chemotherapy sessions. The timestamps caught my eye, sent during business hours in Dubai when he claimed to be too sick to work. The photos showed hotel rooms, not hospitals. Dad's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, looking older than his 70 years. His words about David's Sunday calls and improving chemotherapy broke my heart. I turned the laptop screen toward him and pulled up David's Instagram on my phone. The jet skiing video was posted yesterday. Dad's hands began to shake as reality crashed down. Mom appeared moments later, her defensive walls already up. She accused me of jealousy, of faking evidence. 30 years of programming kicked in instantly. Even faced with proof, she couldn't accept that her golden child had betrayed them. The confrontation escalated quickly, old patterns emerging. I managed to screenshot one crucial photo before Mom grabbed my phone. David's hospital room selfie showed a Dubai license plate reflected in the window. Cross-referencing with his firm's directory confirmed what I suspected. His medical leave started the exact day the money transfers began. My phone buzzed with a text from Kesha, my best friend since college. David had contacted her on LinkedIn about an investment opportunity. My stomach dropped. He was expanding his net, targeting people connected to me. This wasn't just about the money anymore. Mom insisted on calling David immediately. I watched her transformation as his voice filled the room. She cooed and fussed while I pulled up his Instagram stories in real time. There he was, poolside cocktail in hand, while fake coughing for his mother. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. After she hung up, I noticed boxes stacked in the corner. My childhood belongings, things I'd left behind. Curious, I opened one and found my old diary. David had been through it, highlighting every mention of money I'd saved or hidden. His annotations in the margins called me selfish, greedy. My college scholarship essay was marked up with notes about abandonment. My phone rang constantly over the next hour. Patricia, my parents' friend from their golf club, other book club members. David had been busy, sending messages about my supposed mental breakdown. Each caller expressed concern, but I heard the doubt in their voices. He was poisoning the well. The next morning, my assistant pulled me aside at work. Someone had called about verifying my employment for a family emergency. The caller had implied I was unstable, possibly dangerous. My assistant, loyal after 3 years working together, had refused to provide information, but she was worried. My HR director, who'd known my family since I was young, called me to her office. She dismissed the concerns, but warned me that David was calling board members' wives during charity lunches. He was using our childhood stories, twisting them to paint me as a pathological liar. My professional reputation was under attack. I spent my lunch break at my parents' storage unit. David had left boxes there, supposedly containing his college memorabilia. Instead, I found a laptop with browsing history intact. 2 years of Dubai real estate searches, luxury car rentals, investment schemes. He'd been planning this since being passed over for managing partner. The real shock came in a folder marked practice run. David had created a fake investment fund targeting my parents' retirement community. $30,000 raised for guaranteed returns that never materialized. The HOA president had quietly refunded people to avoid scandal. My parents had invested half that amount. I drove to the retirement community and found Diane, the HOA bookkeeper who'd always been suspicious of David. She'd kept copies of everything, waiting for someone to ask. The receipts showed David's signature, his promises, his lies. She mentioned other residents who'd lost money to his emergency loans. The pattern was clear now. Every career setback triggered a new scam. Each con was more elaborate than the last, always protected by our parents' reputation. I mapped the timeline on my phone, seeing how his desperation had escalated to this final, devastating betrayal. A text from an unknown number turned out to be Carla, David's ex-fiancée. She'd seen my parents at the food bank and was concerned about the cancer story. When I explained there was no cancer, her response was immediate. She wanted to meet. Over coffee, Carla shared her story. $40,000 from her grandmother's inheritance had vanished during their engagement. David had convinced her she was crazy for questioning him, using the same gaslighting phrases he now used on our parents. The wedding was called off, but she'd never gotten her money back. That evening, Mom called in a panic. David claimed I was trying to steal his medical power of attorney. I recorded the call, catching him describing an experimental trial requiring $20,000 upfront. His voice was weak, pathetic. Mom was crying, begging me to stop interfering with his treatment. Dad's doubt finally surfaced during dinner at their apartment. He suggested they speak directly to David's doctors. Mom shut him down immediately, but I saw the crack in her armor. The seed of truth was planted, even if she wasn't ready to water it. David's escalation began that night. I woke to find my cousin messaging me frantically. David had contacted him claiming I was elder abusing our parents, using quotes from my childhood diary completely out of context. The manipulation was surgical. He'd twisted my teenage frustrations into evidence of lifelong resentment. I recognized the pattern immediately. When we were kids, David would break my toys, then convince our parents I'd done it myself for attention. Same playbook, just higher stakes now. The realization made my hands clench involuntarily. Kesha's developer brother called with disturbing news. He'd traced David's hospital IP address to a luxury Dubai VPN service. But more concerning was what else he found. David had been logging into my cloud storage, reading years of therapy notes. My stomach turned as I realized the depth of his invasion. I changed every password immediately, but the damage was done. David had already downloaded sessions where I'd discussed feeling guilty about succeeding despite my parents. He'd weaponized my vulnerability against me, using my own healing journey as ammunition. Creating an encrypted folder became my next priority. I documented everything meticulously, sharing access only with Kesha and Rico. Insurance against David's manipulation campaign. Every receipt, every screenshot, every piece of evidence backed up in triplicate. Rico called with updates from his connections. David owed 6 different crews across LA, had been giving each other's addresses as his own. My apartment was his safest option, the only address not already burned with other collectors. The web of his deception was staggering. Miguel became an unexpected ally. Over coffee in the building's break room, he mentioned his own brother had destroyed their family through gambling addiction. His eyes held understanding as he offered to keep the building's security footage secure. Sometimes blood didn't mean protection. Through my company's legal plan, I hired a private investigator. Within days, he uncovered something explosive. David's firm had conducted an internal investigation last year for client fund irregularities. They'd settled quietly to avoid scandal, but the damage was clear. Marcus, David's former assistant, agreed to meet me at the same Denny's where I'd reunited with my parents. He looked exhausted, defeated. David had blamed him for the missing funds, destroyed his career with false accusations. Marcus had kept everything: emails, documents, recordings. He'd known this day would come. I adopted a careful strategy with my parents. Instead of attacking David directly, I expressed concern for his health. Mom noticed my maturity about the situation, her guard lowering slightly. Building credibility meant playing the long game. The collector's deadline loomed. 36 hours to decide whether to drain my savings protecting my parents or let David face consequences that might splash back on them. The weight of the decision pressed on my chest. Carla forwarded wedding vendor emails that made my blood boil. David had told them all her family would pay, then given my work address for the bills. I'd been receiving collection notices for months, dismissing them as mistakes. Another piece of his web revealed. During Sunday dinner at my parents' apartment, David video called from his hospital bed. I spotted Dubai News playing on a muted TV in his background, but my parents were too focused on his face to notice. The performance was flawless. Weak voice, pale makeup, the perfect suffering son. He made his move then, offering to forgive me for abandoning the family if I covered his debts. His manipulation was transparent to me now. When I refused, his mask slipped slightly. He mentioned the collectors had our parents' address too. The threat hung in the air. Kesha's husband, a nurse at Cedars-Sinai, spent an evening researching. No cancer center in LA matched David's descriptions. The treatment protocols he described were nonsensical. My parents began privately questioning things, though they wouldn't admit it aloud. Timeline analysis revealed the full scope of David's planning. He'd started 2 years ago, right after being passed over for managing partner. His cancer symptoms began that same week. Every detail orchestrated, every move calculated. I realized David's control had limits. It only extended to those who still believed his lies. Elderly relatives, distant friends, our parents' generation who didn't want to make trouble. Younger cousins were already questioning things in our family group chat. Marcus provided the firm's investigation file during our second meeting. The numbers were staggering. David had stolen $200,000 from client trust accounts. The firm had covered it to avoid scandal, but forced him out. His medical leave was actually a negotiated suspension. Kesha worked through the night creating an anonymous website documenting David's cons. Every piece of evidence organized, searchable, ready to launch if needed. Sometimes the truth needed a push, she explained, her fingers flying across the keyboard. We spent the night strategizing, our friendship deepening through shared purpose. Kesha reminded me that my parents had failed me, but I hadn't failed myself. The words settled something deep in my chest. Despite my rage, I refused to plant evidence or lie. I wouldn't become David to hit him. My focus remained on documenting truth meticulously, letting facts speak louder than manipulation. During our next video call, I calmly asked David about specific Dubai locations. He stumbled, claimed medical confusion from treatment. Then he accidentally named his hotel instead of the fictional hospital. I screenshot his panicked expression before he could end the call. Dad started checking bank statements secretly. His hands shook as he discovered charges from Dubai luxury stores during David's supposed chemotherapy weeks. He printed everything without telling Mom, hiding the papers in his dresser drawer. Diane, the HOA bookkeeper, took matters into her own hands. She quietly informed other retirement community residents about the investment fund scam. 2 more families came forward. David had borrowed for emergencies that never existed. His reputation crumbled without me saying a word. Mom overheard book club friends whispering about David at the community center. For the first time in my life, she didn't defend him. She sat silently through the entire gossip session, her face growing paler with each revelation. I mobilized my professional network. Colleagues offered my parents better jobs, real support, actual help. Everything David had promised but never delivered materialized through genuine connections. The contrast wasn't lost on them. David called demanding I stop spreading lies. I played the recording of him laughing about taking Mom's jewelry. The long silence before he hung up told me everything. He was rattled, his control slipping. My parents' neighbor mentioned seeing my kindness versus David's absence over the years. She'd always wondered why I stayed away but understood now. Her offer to testify if needed touched me more than I expected. David's options narrowed daily. Dubai's lifestyle costs were mounting. His income had stopped and no new marks were available. He started making desperate offers to return if everyone would just calm down. The panic in his messages was palpable. Carla's grandmother called with the final piece. She'd suspected David all along and hired a forensic accountant. He'd stolen from 3 other exes using similar patterns. The evidence was overwhelming, the pattern undeniable. I made sure my parents had food, support, and dignity while pursuing David. His crimes wouldn't make me cruel. I brought Mom her favorite tea during each visit, small gestures rebuilding what had been broken. Parents' former country club friends began reaching out, ashamed they'd believed David over evidence. They formed an unofficial support network, checking on my parents daily. The community David had poisoned was healing itself. David tried accessing our parents' accounts from Dubai, but I'd already helped them change everything. His attempted wire transfers all failed. The frustrated emails he sent them revealed his growing desperation. Mom found Dad dad's hidden bank statements while cleaning. She broke down completely, clutching my childhood photo she'd kept hidden in her jewelry box. The tears were different this time. Grief for the son she'd lost, not the daughter she'd pushed away. My reputation as the good daughter spread through the community. Job offers for my parents multiplied. People offered genuine help, not the false promises David had made. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Complete financial forensics showed David had stolen $500,000 across all victims. Most was spent on his lifestyle. Luxury cars, high-end escorts, gambling. He had maybe $50,000 left if that. The money was gone. The collector's deadline arrived. Rico warned they'd escalate to my parents next. I had to act decisively. The weight of protecting them while letting David face consequences required careful balance. Mom admitted to Dad that she'd known something was wrong but couldn't face losing her golden child. They held each other in their tiny apartment, their marriage healing through shared pain. Watching them rebuild gave me unexpected hope. I realized I wasn't just saving them financially. I was freeing them from David's psychological prison they'd lived in for decades. Every truth revealed loosened his grip on their reality. When Mom broke down during my next visit, I comforted her without gloating. I explained that David was sick in a different way, that his betrayal wasn't her fault. It was the first time she'd properly hugged me since I was 8 years old. The extended family group chat exploded as evidence spread. Cousins shared their own David stories. Loans never repaid, lies about me, manipulations they'd noticed but never mentioned. The truth had been there all along, waiting to be acknowledged. Even David's law school friends admitted they'd always suspected something was off. They told me he'd talked about me like I was dead, made them think I'd done something terrible to be erased so completely. The revelation stung less than I expected. I negotiated with the main collector through Rico. David's debt would transfer fully to him. My parents would be clear. I provided David's Dubai contact information, his hotel details, his daily routines. The collector's satisfaction was evident in his voice. David attempted his last manipulation, threatening Sewer's lied if I didn't stop. I recognized the tactic from childhood, the same threat he'd used to get bigger birthday presents. I didn't take the bait, but documented the threat carefully. Kesha monitored David's social media. Hours after the Sewer's lied threat, he was posting from a yacht party about fake family trying to bring down success. The cognitive dissonance would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. David's firm officially terminated him after I confidentially shared evidence with their legal department. His income stopped immediately, though his LinkedIn still claimed medical leave. The Dubai lifestyle was unsustainable now. My parents began therapy, their relationship with me slowly rebuilding on an honest foundation. For the first time in my life, we were relating as real people, not the roles they'd assigned us at birth. My team at work rallied around me, offering to create a victim fund for David's targets. My leadership through this crisis had only strengthened their respect. The irony wasn't lost on me. The child given nothing had built something real. All evidence compiled into a comprehensive package. 47 pages documenting every lie, every theft, every manipulation. The timeline alone was 12 pages, supported by receipts, screenshots, recordings. The truth was undeniable. Mom apologized for the first time in my life. She admitted she'd been so afraid of being a bad mother that she'd become a terrible one. She said I deserved better, that she'd spend whatever time she had left trying to make amends. The words I'd waited decades to hear felt surreal. Dad's admission came during our next meeting at their apartment. He acknowledged how he'd enabled David while crushing my dreams, his voice cracking as he promised to spend whatever time remained making amends. The weight of 30 years lifted slightly from my shoulders. The community's response accelerated. David's reputation crumbled as more stories emerged. Parents' friends who'd defended him for decades now crossed the street to avoid association. Natural consequences unfolded without my intervention. I discovered David had purchased fake cancer treatment receipts from the dark web. The complete medical fraud kit cost $500, the ultimate insult to our parents' life savings. I added this evidence to my growing documentation. Parents' former country club friends reached out with genuine apologies. They admitted their judgment about my leaving had been wrong. I accepted graciously while maintaining boundaries. Trust required more than words. David's desperation peaked. He returned to LA secretly, appearing at my parents' apartment still playing the cancer patient role. My parents didn't let him inside, though Mom wavered seeing him thin from stress. His manipulation still had hooks in her heart. The confrontation escalated when David convinced two relatives I was controlling our parents' finances for inheritance. They demanded a welfare check, creating a scene at the apartment complex. The police found nothing concerning, but the damage to family relationships deepened. I handled the family drama alone while Kesha traveled for work. Every lesson about standing strong was tested. Despite the isolation and pressure, I maintained my course. David's tactics only strengthened my resolve. Making a crucial decision, I offered David $10,000 to disappear forever. It represented my remaining savings, but clean closure seemed worth the price. I knew he'd likely refuse or demand more, so I recorded our entire exchange. David took the money immediately, then demanded additional payments, revealing he never intended to honor any agreement. I'd anticipated this betrayal and captured everything. His greed would be his downfall. The family gathering at my aunt's house became the final battleground. David arrived playing victim while I arrived with evidence. Family members had to choose sides. The division was painful but necessary. David spun elaborate lies while I calmly presented receipts, screenshots, and recordings. Truth clashed with performance as relatives watched. Some clung to comfortable delusions, while others finally acknowledged reality. His final secret emerged through social media. David had married a wealthy woman in Dubai 6 months ago, running the same cancer scam on her family. Wedding photos surfaced on her Instagram, revealing another layer of deception. During the confrontation, his Dubai wife's brother called. They'd discovered David's lies and wanted him arrested. He offered to fly me out as a witness. The international scope of David's crimes became clear. I faced a choice between helping Dubai authorities arrest David or letting street justice from collectors handle him. Both options meant his destruction. Neither felt entirely right despite everything he'd done. Choosing a third option, I provided provided collectors with David's Dubai location, while warning his wife's family so they could protect themselves. Justice without becoming an executioner. David's own choices would determine his fate. David realized he was trapped between angry creditors and defrauded in-laws with nowhere to run. His confident mask finally dropped completely. The golden child persona crumbled as consequences closed in from all sides. His final manipulation attempt claimed I'd orchestrated everything from the beginning, that our parents' poverty was my fault for not helping sooner. The accusation fell flat. No one believed him anymore. Mom stood up during his tirade, her voice steady for the first time. She acknowledged failing us both, but noted only one child had become cruel. Dad added their enabling was finished. The finality in their voices was absolute. I secured victory through truth rather than revenge. David's own choices created his downfall. I never had to become him to hit him. The moral high ground felt better than any vengeance could have. David fled the family gathering with nowhere to go. His Dubai in-laws had frozen his accounts, collectors monitored airports, and family protection had evaporated. Every escape route he'd carefully maintained was gone. My parents signed the restraining order I'd prepared. David was officially barred from their lives, unable to manipulate them again. Legal protection supplemented their emotional boundaries. I helped my parents begin therapy sessions, watching our relationship rebuild on honest foundations. My tech connections secured Dad a spot in a coding bootcamp. His excitement about learning something new was infectious. News arrived within days. David had been arrested in Dubai for fraud against his wife's family. He'd served time there before facing consequences in LA. The cosmic justice felt appropriate.